What if the story we thought ended in Avengers Endgame wasn't really the ending at all? What if those final heartbreaking moments, the snap of Tony Stark's fingers, the passing of the shield to Sam Wilson, the tearful goodbyes to Natasha and Vision, were not just conclusions, but carefully placed beginnings of something darker, something bigger, something Marvel still hasn't revealed? Could it be that buried inside Endgame, a film we thought tied up a decade-long saga, were hidden clues pointing toward Marvel's next cataclysmic event, Avengers Doomsday? And if that's true, then here's the ultimate question. Was Dr. Doom already in the background of Endgame, silently shaping the chaos that we thought belonged to Thanos alone? This isn't just fan speculation for the sake of hype. Marvel has always thrived on layers, misdirection, and subtle teases that don't make sense until years later. Remember how an Infinity Gauntlet sitting in Odin's vault during the first Thor was brushed off as a mistake? Years later, Marvel themselves called it a fake, but in truth, that moment seeded the visual of a weapon that would later define an entire saga. Or think about how, in Iron Man 2, a young boy wearing an Iron Man mask in the Stark Expo crowd was just an Easter egg, until Marvel years later confirmed that boy was Peter Parker. The MCU loves hiding the future inside the past. And that makes us wonder, did Endgame already whisper the name of Doom long before Marvel announced the Multiverse saga? If it did, then Doomsday isn't just another crossover, it's the story Endgame was already pointing us toward. To truly unpack this, we need to think about Endgame in a way that goes beyond the surface level story of Avengers versus Thanos. Because if you peel back the layers, you start to notice something strange. Time travel wasn't just a convenient plot device, it was the ignition of chaos. The Infinity Stones weren't just destroyed or returned, their absence rewrote the balance of the universe. And the idea of variants and alternate timelines, which exploded later in Loki and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, actually began with Tony Stark and Scott Lang arguing over whether or not Back to the Future's rules apply. That wasn't just Banner, that was Marvel priming us for the next era of storytelling. Which means Endgame wasn't just closure, it was setup. Setup for who? Perhaps not Kang, as much as Marvel wants us to believe. Maybe Kang is only the smoke. The real fire is Doom. Here's where the breadcrumbs start to show themselves. In Endgame, when the Avengers use the quantum suits to travel across time, notice the language used by the Ancient One during her conversation with Bruce Banner. She doesn't just say the Infinity Stones are important. She says that without them, darkness will spread. Now, if we look at that line with hindsight, it doesn't just describe alternate timelines spiraling into chaos. It reads like a warning about a figure who thrives in that chaos. A figure who has historically sought control of the multiverse itself by mastering science and sorcery. Who does that sound like? Dr. Victor Von Doom. It's not just in that line, though. Think about the destruction of the Infinity Stones in Endgame. Thanos claims to have reduced them to atoms, which leaves the universe exposed and defenseless. What if that action didn't just destabilize reality, but sent out a beacon of vulnerability? A ripple through time and space that Doom, in his ever-watchful pursuit of dominance, could sense. Because Doom isn't just another warlord, he's a strategist. He doesn't wait until the battlefield is ready. He creates the battlefield. What if Endgame was Marvel's hidden way of telling us that Doom has already entered the game board, studying from the shadows, preparing for Doomsday? And here's where the storytelling becomes even more intriguing. Everyone assumes that Kang is the central villain of the multiverse saga. After all, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania introduced us to his terrifying intellect and his war against other versions of himself. But comic fans know this. Doom has always been Marvel's ultimate trump card. Kang is powerful, yes, but Doom's brilliance isn't confined to time manipulation. He fuses science and sorcery in a way no other villain can. In fact, some of Marvel's greatest comic arcs, Secret Wars for instance, don't feature Kang as the final boss. They feature Doom, who rewrites reality itself. And if Marvel is bold enough to retitle an Avengers film as Doomsday, then perhaps Kang is only the false threat. Doom, instead, is the shadow villain whose presence was seeded years earlier in Endgame itself. Let's dive deeper. One of the strangest, most overlooked lines in Endgame comes when Rocket Raccoon and Thor travel to Asgard. While sneaking around, Rocket reminds Thor that they only need to grab the Reality Stone. But Thor keeps talking about a threat you can't see. At the time, it reads like Thor's drunken paranoia. But think about it. The Reality Stone is the very weapon Doom has historically sought in the comics, since controlling reality gives him dominance over existence itself. Was Thor unknowingly foreshadowing the presence of a hidden threat? Was Marvel teasing us with a line that didn't really make sense then, but could be retrofitted as Doom's shadow? And what about Tony Stark's final act? His "I am Iron Man" snap is framed as the ultimate sacrifice, the end of a journey. But what if it was also the beginning of a larger cosmic imbalance? In the comics, whenever such immense power is used, it leaves scars across the multiverse. What if Tony's snap, in removing Thanos and his army, also fractured reality just enough for Doom to notice? After all, Doom is obsessed with filling vacuums of power. And Tony's death left one enormous vacuum, not just in the Avengers, but in the hierarchy of the MCU's protectors. Who steps in to exploit such a vacuum? Not Kang, Doom. There's another layer to this as well. Consider Doctor Strange. Strange tells Tony he saw 14,605 possible futures and only one where they win. What's fascinating is that Strange never explains why the other futures failed. Everyone assumes it's because Thanos won. But what if some of those futures weren't lost to Thanos, but to someone else? What if Doom's presence was already being felt across those futures, and Strange kept it hidden, knowing that revealing Doom too soon would paralyze the Avengers with fear? Because Strange has a habit of holding back truths until the right moment. What if Endgame was our first unspoken brush with Doom's shadow, a detail Strange knew but never revealed? Now let's add another compelling clue. Remember Vormir, the place of the Soul Stone? In Endgame, Natasha and Clint travel there only to find Red Skull as the Stone Keeper. But doesn't it feel strange that Red Skull, banished by the Tesseract in Captain America, the first Avenger, ended up as a cosmic gatekeeper? Why him specifically? Unless, of course, someone orchestrated his presence there. In the comics, Doom has manipulated countless villains, bending them into his schemes without them even realizing it. What if Red Skull's transformation into a wraith-like guide wasn't just a random punishment by the Space Stone, but part of a chain of manipulation seeded by Doom's influence? That idea may sound bold, but ask yourself this. Has Marvel ever truly wasted a character's arc? Or are they planting seeds that pay off decades later? And speaking of seeds, there's one blink and you'll miss it detail in Endgame that may be the biggest clue of all. During the time heist, when the Avengers return to New York 2012, the camera lingers, almost unnecessarily, on the Stark Tower battle aftermath. Loki, the Tesseract, the Chitauri, all of it feels familiar. But there's a moment when the Avengers argue about the logistics of moving the stones. Behind them, almost hidden in the rubble, is a shuttle-like craft. Most people dismissed it as set dressing, but some eagle-eyed fans noticed its design didn't match Chitauri tech, nor Stark's. It looked different, more advanced, more Latvian. Could this shuttle be Marvel's sly way of dropping Dr. Doom's footprint into Endgame without telling us outright? If true, then Doomsday isn't a sudden invention. It's been waiting in the wings since 2019. Think of the poetry in that. Endgame, the supposed end of the Infinity Saga, secretly introducing the villain of the next saga. Just as Avengers 2012 teased Thanos in its post-credit scene, perhaps Endgame teased Doom, not in a post-credit scene, but buried inside the film itself. Marvel may have thought, what better way to hide the next villain than in plain sight, in the most scrutinized film of all time, knowing no one would believe it unless they connected the dots years later. That's exactly the kind of long game Marvel plays. And if that's true, then the title Doomsday isn't just hype, it's destiny. That brings us to the first arc of this theory, the recognition that Endgame wasn't just closure, but setup. Every character arc, every Infinity Stone, every ripple of time travel created the perfect stage for Doom. Thanos thought he was inevitable. But Doom is patient. Doom is timeless. Doom is inevitable in a way Thanos never was. The question isn't whether Doom is coming. The question is whether he was already there, silently smiling when Tony Stark whispered, "I am Iron Man." If Arc 1 was about recognizing that Avengers Endgame planted the seeds of something bigger than Thanos, then Arc 2 is about following those seeds forward into the strange corridors of Marvel's multiverse saga, the presence of Kang, and the strange way all roads might actually lead not to Kang, but to Doom. Because if Endgame was secretly Doom's prologue, then the movies that followed are his chessboard. And the more you look at them, the more you realize we've been watching Doom's fingerprints the entire time, only we didn't know it yet. Let's start with the character everyone assumes is the big bad of this saga, Kang the Conqueror. He's been hyped as the time-traveling warlord, the one who can manipulate futures, destroy timelines, and dominate realities. And sure, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, we saw just how ruthless and intelligent Kang can be. But think about how Marvel actually handled him. He was hyped to be terrifying yet defeated by ants. And his Council of Kangs post-credit scene felt less like the unveiling of an unbeatable threat and more like a chaotic swarm of egos. If Marvel really wanted Kang to be the next Thanos-level villain, would they show him getting outmaneuvered so early? Or is that the point? What if Kang is intentionally being presented as overwhelming yet flawed? Because Kang is not the real endgame here. Kang is just the curtain. Behind him in the shadows is Doom. This mirrors the comics perfectly. In Marvel lore, Kang and Doom have always shared the same stage. Kang is the conqueror who sees time as a weapon, while Doom is the ruler who sees destiny as his to rewrite. And often, when Kang reaches his peak, Doom emerges to surpass him. Think of the original Secret Wars. The Beyonder brings heroes and villains to Battleworld, and who is the one that steals ultimate power? Not Kang. It's Doom. He takes the Beyonder's abilities and bends reality itself. Even in stories where Kang is terrifying, Doom is the one who outsmarts him, who claims the true victory. If Marvel is faithful to its source material, then Kang's rise is not the climax, it's the distraction. Doom's rise is the real story. And maybe, just maybe, Endgame was the first signal that Marvel was already laying the ground for Doom's eventual takeover. Now, let's connect this idea to the events that followed Endgame. In Loki, the concept of the sacred timeline is introduced. He Who Remains, another Kang variant, explains how timelines spiral into chaos without his control. But think about this. Who benefits most from the destruction of the sacred timeline? Not Kang, who is fractured into warring variants. Doom, however, thrives on a multiverse in disarray. A fractured multiverse is a playground for someone who combines sorcery, science, and raw ambition. And doesn't it strike you as odd that He Who Remains, despite supposedly being all-powerful, felt almost fearful of someone else? He spoke of chaos, of dangers that would follow his death, but he never names Doom. Because in true Marvel fashion, the name is being saved for the moment it will hit hardest. Now recall something important. In Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we see the concept of incursions, entire universes colliding and destroying each other caused by tampering with reality. This idea doesn't just come out of nowhere, it's straight out of the comics, specifically Secret Wars, 2015. And who was at the heart of that story? Doom. He doesn't just survive the incursions. He manipulates them, seizes the power of the Beyonders, and becomes God Emperor Doom, reshaping reality itself. Marvel introducing the concept of incursions this early isn't a coincidence. It's foreshadowing Doom's eventual ascension. The MCU is teeing up the board for Doomsday, a film that could very well adapt parts of Secret Wars, but filtered through the MCU's unique lens. Let's circle back to Endgame. Time travel is the big catalyst of that movie, but it's also the most dangerous toy the Avengers could have played with. Tony Stark's time GPS, the Pym particles, the quantum realm, all of it was used recklessly in a desperate mission. Sure, they succeeded in defeating Thanos, but at what cost? Steve Rogers staying in the past creates a branching timeline. Loki escaping with the Tesseract creates another. Returning the stones may have closed some branches, but others splintered outward. This chaos is exactly the kind of cosmic wound Doom could exploit. Because Doom is not like Thanos. He doesn't need armies or brute strength to win. He waits for cracks in the foundation, then rebuilds the structure in his own image. And Endgame cracked the foundation of reality itself. But there's another angle here, one that's almost poetic. Tony Stark dies in Endgame. Steve Rogers retires. Natasha sacrifices herself. The founding Avengers either fall or leave. And what rises in their place? A vacuum of leadership. Who fills that vacuum? The Fantastic Four. In comics, the Fantastic Four aren't just Marvel's first family. They're Doom's eternal rivals. Reed Richards is the only mind Doom respects, and their battle defines Marvel's grandest stories. Endgame ended the story of Iron Man and Captain America precisely so the stage could be cleared for the Fantastic Four. And if the Fantastic Four are coming, then Doom isn't far behind. Because you cannot introduce Reed Richards without his shadow, Doom, being present. It would be like introducing Batman without Joker. They are bound two sides of the same coin. Here's where the theory sharpens. Avengers Doomsday might not just be a title. It could be the literal Day of Doom. Think about how Marvel titles its films. Age of Ultron wasn't a literal age, it was a short reign. Infinity War wasn't about war across the galaxy. It was a concentrated fight over Infinity Stones. So Doomsday might not be a single apocalyptic event, but rather the day Doom is revealed, the day his presence is undeniable. And the reason Marvel may be hiding him so carefully right now is because the reveal will be seismic. Just as Thanos' grin at the end of Avengers 2012 shook the fandom, Doom's first true appearance will redefine the stakes. And if Marvel is patient enough, they may already be waiting for Endgame to be reinterpreted years later, so audiences say, "Oh my God, he was there all along." Let's not forget the symbolic imagery in Endgame. When Captain America faces Thanos' army alone, broken shield in hand, it feels like the ultimate battle against tyranny. But in the comics, Cap's broken shield is also a recurring symbol in battles against Doom. Doom is obsessed with proving superiority, not just to Reed Richards, but to symbols of hope like Captain America. That image of Cap standing alone may not just foreshadow his triumph against Thanos. It may foreshadow the hopeless battles yet to come when Doom steps onto the battlefield. Because Doom is not just stronger. He is smarter, colder, and infinitely more personal. He doesn't want to kill the Avengers. He wants to own their legacy. Now let's follow the trail of hidden hints again. Remember that shuttle-like craft spotted in the background during the New York Times heist sequence in Endgame? Some brushed it off as set design, others as leftover Chitauri wreckage. But fans who paused and analyzed frame by frame saw something peculiar. It bore design elements that seemed more Earth-like but not Stark's or S.H.I.E.L.D.'s. What if it was Latvian? What if Marvel slipped in Doom's footprint right there, buried in the rubble of the very battle that introduced Thanos? It would be poetic. Endgame beginning where the first Avengers movie ended, and Doom's mark left quietly where Thanos was first teased. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. That's how Marvel hides its biggest secrets. But maybe the clearest clue isn't visual at all. Maybe it's thematic. Endgame is about sacrifice. Heroes giving up everything to protect the universe. Doom's entire philosophy is the inversion of that. He doesn't sacrifice, he seizes. He doesn't protect the universe as it is. He believes he can remake it better under his rule. Endgame gave us the greatest acts of selflessness in Marvel history. Doomsday will give us the greatest act of selfishness. Doom claiming that only he can fix reality, even if it means destroying it first. That's not just a villain. That's a philosophy. And philosophies are harder to fight than armies. Let's weave Kang back in one more time. Everyone expects Kang Dynasty to lead directly into Secret Wars. But imagine this. The Avengers defeat Kang only to realize too late that Kang was never the true threat. In the moment of their victory, Doom steps in and takes everything Kang built. This is straight from the comics. Doom letting others do the hard work, then stealing the reward. That would mean Kang was always a pawn. His dynasty nothing but scaffolding for Doom's empire. Which explains why Endgame left so many loose threads. The time heist, the broken timelines, the lost Infinity Stones, they weren't mistakes. They were the soil in which Doom's victory would grow. And doesn't that just feel inevitable? After all, Thanos said he was inevitable. But inevitability doesn't end with one villain. It is the cycle of power itself. And in Marvel's cycle, Thanos was yesterday's inevitability. Doom is tomorrow's. Arc 2 ends with a realization. Kang may look like the villain of the multiverse saga, but Doom is the inevitable shadow. Endgame broke the universe open, and Doom is the only one brilliant and ruthless enough to seize it. Every film since has been pulling us toward this revelation. And when Doomsday arrives, it won't feel like a new beginning. It'll feel like the ending Endgame secretly promised. If Arc 1 revealed that Endgame planted the hidden seeds of Doom, and Arc 2 showed us how Kang might only be a distraction while Doom waits in the shadows, then Arc 3 is about what happens when those shadows finally emerge. Because the true question is not whether Doom is coming, it's how he makes his entrance. And if history, both comic and cinematic, is any guide, Doom never just walks onto the stage. He seizes it, rewrites the rules, and forces everyone, heroes, villains, even gods, to bend to his design. That's why the looming film title Avengers Doomsday feels less like a marketing gimmick and more like a prophecy. And to understand that prophecy, we need to imagine what Doom's first great strike against the MCU might look like. Picture the aftermath of Kang Dynasty. The Avengers, battered and broken, finally succeed in defeating the multiversal tyrant. They sacrifice everything to stop his armies, just as their predecessors sacrificed everything to stop Thanos. And just when relief seems possible, when the audience believes victory has been won, that's when Doom appears. Not as a warrior charging the battlefield, but as the mastermind stepping out from the smoke, revealing that he orchestrated the final collapse. This is Doom's nature. He doesn't just fight. He lets others bleed first, then takes the throne at the perfect moment. It's the kind of narrative twist Marvel thrives on, because it reframes everything we thought we understood. Suddenly, Kang wasn't the final boss at all. He was the warm-up. Doom is the endgame of the endgame. But Doom isn't like Thanos, who wanted balance, or Kang, who wanted dominance. Doom wants destiny. In the comics, Doom has always believed that only his rule can save the world from itself. He's not a nihilist like Thanos, who sought destruction for balance. He's not a fractured conqueror like Kang, forever fighting his own variants. Doom is whole. Doom is certain. Doom believes he is the only solution. And that makes him terrifying because his conviction makes him impossible to reason with. To Doom, enslaving the universe is not tyranny, it is mercy. And that philosophy transforms every Avengers victory into Doom's opportunity. Because the Avengers fight to preserve freedom, but Doom fights to impose order. And deep down, there will be moments where his order almost looks tempting. Now, think about the MCU's current lineup of heroes. The old guard is gone. Tony, Steve, Natasha, even Thor feels diminished. In their place, we have new blood. Sam Wilson as Captain America, Kate Bishop learning the bow, Shang-Chi mastering the 10 rings, America Chavez opening portals through universes. We have power, yes, but not unity. This new team is young, uncertain, still struggling to define itself. That's exactly when Doom thrives. He appears when the world is divided, when heroes are unsure of themselves. And unlike Thanos, Doom won't announce his arrival with a gauntlet or an invasion. He'll appear as a ruler, a man with a plan, a sovereign of Latveria whose very existence challenges the Avengers' ideals. And when he speaks, people will listen. Because Doom doesn't just intimidate, he persuades. He convinces entire nations that his way is salvation. And if Marvel leans into this, then Doomsday won't just be an action spectacle, it will be a philosophical war for the soul of the universe. And remember how Endgame showed us the power of sacrifice? Doom's story will show us the danger of control. That's why the title Doomsday is so potent. Not only does it signal the arrival of Doom, but it also plays on the idea that when one man tries to control destiny, the day of doom inevitably follows. This symmetry makes the connection to Endgame even sharper. Tony Stark's sacrifice wasn't just the end of an era, it was the start of the vacuum that Doom will fill. Where Tony gave everything away, Doom takes everything for himself. The ultimate mirror. Let's bring in the Fantastic Four here, because they are crucial. Reed Richards is the one man Doom sees as his equal, perhaps his better, and that drives him mad. If Marvel times this correctly, Fantastic Four could debut just before Avengers Doomsday, introducing Reed as the brilliant scientist the Avengers hope can replace Stark's absence. But Doom will not allow Reed to exist without conflict. Reed represents intellect with humility, while Doom represents intellect with arrogance. Their clash is cosmic destiny. So imagine Doomsday centering not just on Avengers versus Doom, but on Reed Richards versus Doom, a rivalry that began long before either man set foot in the Avengers story. This makes Doom's threat deeply personal, not just universal. He's not only dismantling the Avengers' hope, he's dismantling Reed's very identity as a hero. The beauty of this setup is that it ties directly back to Endgame's themes of legacy. Steve's shield, Tony's arc reactor, Natasha's sacrifice, all these were legacies passed on. Doom doesn't inherit legacies. He destroys them, replaces them with his own. In fact, Doom's greatest power is not his armor, not his sorcery, but his ability to rewrite reality's meaning. He takes what the Avengers stand for and twists it until their victories feel like failures. When Tony snapped his fingers and declared, "I am Iron Man," it felt like hope. When Doom reshapes the universe, he will say, "I am inevitable truth." And audiences will shudder because for a moment, it might feel true. This is where Endgame's hidden hints come back full circle. The Ancient One's warning to Banner about darkness spreading without the stones. Red Skull's cryptic fate on Vormir, as if some unseen hand dictated his punishment. Strange's silence about the 14 million futures he saw. Each of these moments can be reinterpreted as whispers of doom. And if Marvel builds to Doomsday correctly, fans will look back on Endgame the way we look back on Iron Man or the Avengers, not as standalone stories, but as puzzle pieces leading to a larger revelation. Now let's talk about how Doomsday could unfold. The word itself suggests cataclysm, but remember, Marvel's titles are layered. Doomsday could mean the day of Doom's rise. It could mean the collapse of the multiverse into his hands. It could even mean the Avengers' darkest defeat. Imagine the film opening with Doom revealing that he has harnessed the power of incursions. Whole universes collide, but instead of perishing, Doom absorbs them, forging a battle world-like domain under his rule. The Avengers scramble to stop him, but every strike they make only strengthens him. Because Doom doesn't just win with fists, he wins with inevitability. He has seen their flaws, their divisions, their need for sacrifice, and he turns them into weapons against them. The result? A story not about whether the Avengers can win, but whether they can resist Doom's philosophy. Because for the first time, audiences might ask, what if Doom is right? And that's the terrifying brilliance of Doom. Unlike Thanos, whose logic crumbled under scrutiny, Doom's arguments can sometimes feel convincing. In a multiverse filled with endless chaos, incursions, and fractured timelines, maybe one ruler really is the only solution. And if that ruler is brilliant enough, maybe the cost of freedom feels worth the price of survival. That tension between freedom and survival is the beating heart of Doomsday. And it's exactly what Endgame primed us for, because when Tony Stark made his sacrifice, he proved that freedom is worth dying for. Doom will make us ask, is freedom worth dying for again? So how might the Avengers actually fight back? This is where legacy matters most. Just as the old guard sacrificed everything in Endgame, the new guard will have to prove they are worthy of carrying that torch. Sam Wilson as Captain America standing firm in the face of Doom's tyranny. Shang-Chi wielding the 10 rings against Doom's sorcery. Wanda, if she returns, confronting Doom as perhaps the only sorcerer powerful enough to match him. And Reed Richards standing at the center, proving that intellect doesn't need arrogance to reshape the world. These aren't just battles, they're symbols. Every punch, every shield throw, every spell cast will echo the theme that Doom can never win because Doom cannot inspire. He can rule, but he cannot lead hearts. And that is where the Avengers will find their strength. And let's not forget the emotional weight. Endgame left us weeping because it felt like the end of a family we'd grown with for a decade. Doomsday has the chance to make us weep again, but for a different reason. Not because heroes die, but because they nearly surrender. Because for a moment, we'll believe Doom has convinced them. And when they rise against all odds, it won't just feel like another fight. It will feel like a spiritual victory, a declaration that hope cannot be conquered by control. That's the kind of ending Marvel needs to make Doomsday not just another blockbuster, but another cultural event. And when we look back, we'll realize that it all began with Endgame. The broken shield, the missing stones, the shadowed shuttle in New York, the whispered warnings about darkness. Every clue, every thread pointing not just to a war against Thanos, but to the war yet to come. The war against Doom. That's how the MCU operates. Not in isolated movies, but in echoes, in seeds that bloom years later. Which means when we sit in the theater for Doomsday, it won't feel like a surprise. It will feel like destiny. So here's the final thought. Avengers Endgame was not the end. It was the prologue to Doom's story. And when Doom finally steps onto the stage, we'll realize that Thanos' snap was just the warm-up. Doom's rise is the real inevitability. That's why Doomsday matters. Because it's not just a movie title. It's the day Marvel's greatest villain finally claims his throne. And everything we've seen since Endgame, Kang, incursions, fractured timelines was only the path leading us there. And if that doesn't make your blood run cold with excitement, ask yourself this. Was Doom watching when Tony Stark said, "I am Iron Man"? Was he smiling, knowing the sacrifice of one man was the key to the rise of another? If so, then Doomsday isn't coming. It's already here. We're just waiting to see it unfold. That's the journey, friends. From the quiet whispers of Endgame to the thunder of Doomsday, we've connected the dots and seen how Doom may have been in the shadows all along. If you've made it this far into the theory, I want to thank you for sticking with me through every twist, every hidden clue, and every bold speculation. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow Marvel fans, and of course, subscribe for more deep dive theories just like this one. And if you want to directly support the work that goes into creating these massive, carefully researched scripts, consider dropping a $25 super chat. It goes a long way in helping us keep building this community and pushing out more epic content. Because remember, in the multiverse of Marvel theories, you are the real heroes keeping this alive. And together we'll be ready when doom finally arrives.